All right, everybody. This is Adam Perry from TrueDFS, and we only have a 4-game NHL slate today. But it's a bit of a slow DFS day, but I figured that is perfect time to make a little video about process and just some thoughts about NHL DFS. There has been some more content lately and a lot of really cool stuff and ideas getting shared around the industry. So just going to spitball it a little. I had two things I wanted to bring up that I thought were pretty interesting and relevant for NHL DFS. And we'll see if anyone has any feedback or thoughts. But one has been a debate going on, and this kind of happened in the SaberSim Discord, but I think you hear it quite a bit around the industry for those of us that do play NHL DFS. And it's the question of playing even strength lines versus power play lines. And someone brought up some interesting data that while SaberSim is very keen to play power play lines, the even strength lines do tend to score something. I think it was in the range of like 30% more. There's about 30% more goals on even strength. So then the question is, well, why don't you play more even strength lines if the correlation is better? And my thoughts on this are that, or my contribution to it is that may be the case, but one of the reasons SaberSim may be favoring power play lines is not a mistake, but that the correlation between even strength line is a correlation at the middle part of the distribution, however middling it is in hockey, right? It's not a normal curve. But it may be that the middle range or the average outcomes are highly correlated for even strength lines, and that the outlier, the right tail of the distribution, is more correlated to the power play. So it may seem like a mistake that SaberSim favors the power play. It may actually be something we want to lean into because at the outliers, which is what we need for DFS, that may actually correlate a lot more to the outliers. So there are fewer power plays, but when teams are rolling on the power play, their goal chances increases. Those goals are more highly correlated with each other, especially if you have all 5 guys rather than the 3 EV guys plus the defensemen or who are on the ice at that time. So that's kind of the debate, and that's my contribution to it. And seeing as we need outlier outcomes for DFS, I tend to prefer to lean into the power play, assuming that my analysis is correct. It's a bit of a black box for those of us that don't do modeling ourselves and use SaberSim, but I think intuitively that makes sense to me. And I think that the folks who prefer the even strength have a little bit of a bias towards the average outcome. When for DFS, I mean, even to cash, we need an 80th percentile outcome. So I'm going to continue to lean into power plays. I think it's up for debate, and maybe we will learn more. We will get more info on Sims, etc. But right now, those are my 2 cents on it, that if you want outlier performances, you want power plays, and it is worth thinking about. And when you are playing power plays, it brings up another issue I want to discuss that I think it's always being debated around the industry, and you see it in a lot of content, is the question of how many guys to stack. I mean, do you prefer 4-man stacks, 3-man stacks to the quote unquote onslaughts of the 5-man or even the 6-man? And if you're playing power plays and playing everyone on the power play, it's certainly going to get you into 5-mans and even 6 if you tack anyone on. And needless to say, I just, gave my endorsement of the power plays. I would also endorse at least thinking about the larger onslaught stacks. But I will say that this debate is probably it's not a real debate. I mean, I think we're all kind of talking about it differently on our different streams. Plus, insofar as any of us are talking to each other, it's friendly and it goes on in Discord, etc. So, but I think that we are talking past each other a bit because we are considering price. And the price of a 5-man stack could be such that it is well worth it, depending on the value guys that you might be bringing along. And I want to use today's Florida Panthers as an example. So if I just go to DraftKings, so they have some injuries, and their 5-man power play has gotten a lot cheaper because they have a $2,500 guy who is on the power play, and they're also going to have a $2,500 or $2,600 defenseman who's on the power play. So now you're getting the full power play at a much smaller price for a team with a pretty high total. I mean, they've got 3.1 in SaberSim. So, the question of do you want to 5-man stack them or do you want to stack the power play changes a little bit when you're bringing along cheap guys that are correlated as opposed to when it's really expensive. So I'm just going to put, if I go to Daily Face-Off to get the Florida 5-man, here's how they project on the even strength. And if you wanted to play like their EV1, for example, you're paying a solid price, and we'll show that. Versus here, who Ekblad, who's normally on power play 1, could be out. There's some news on that. But if he's not you're going to get Bachfist on there. So just to look at this question of do you want to play a 5-man stack of the power play with Ekblad in at 4,800, leaves you 4,900 a man. Take him out, put in Bachfist, it leaves you $600 more per player. I mean, if we were to correlate the goalie on a team who's an underdog, we've got a pretty healthy amount to go off of for the rest of our lineup. So here you get a 5-man that is pretty cost effective. If we were to put it in Colorado and go to their power play, so line 1 is Druin, McKinnon, Rantanen. They're going to be correlated on the power play, which is pretty nice. Druin, McKinnon, Rantanen with Middlestead and Makar. So if we were to play a 5-man Colorado, it's a little bit different, right? We don't have anything left. Even if we wanted to play a cheap goalie, the Seattle's, we can't even do it, right? So, let's say you want to play the 5-man another way. You want to take off Rantanen, who's really expensive, and put on like one of their young defensemen who's cheap. You're still left with less money and less correlation than you were with the Florida 5-man. So these are not all created equal. But I will say, think about what you're doing when you're stacking with 5 or 6 guys and who that 5th and 6th guy is, right? So when you're getting cheap guys to come along, you're taking guys who normally would be pretty fishy and who may be good value plays, but who only get there or are much more likely to get there when they're brought along by the more expensive guys that you can get in because of that. I did the same thing with New Jersey. So off the top of my head, New Jersey power play is like Hughes, Heischer, Bratt, Nason, and Dougie Hamilton. So you're not left with much. But let's say I wanted to get in someone like Dylan at 2,600, put in a goalie, even an expensive one. I'm left with a little bit. But what I did here with the onslaught is I have a guy at 2,600 who can be tough to get there on his own, but this is kind of like the punt tight end question or the 2 tight end question in football. When he does get there at the low price, what does it get you? And when he does get there, it tends to be because he's brought along by other things. So I think this question of like to 4-man, to 5-man, to 6-man is pretty price dependent and it depends how you construct the stack and who's available for those. So that's my 2 cents on it. In any event, we'll go in and try and talk about the slate. I think right now there's a bit of an issue in SaberSim in that I think all signs are pointing to Quinn Hughes playing for Vancouver, and he's going to be the power play quarterback instead of Tyler Myers. Right now, Tyler Myers is coming in at a great value because he's top defenseman, top deep pairing, playing a lot of time, and he will also be on power play 1. Now, being on the top deep pairing does not necessarily correlate you so much with EV1 skaters or anything, but what it does do is it tends to mean you're going to get some more time on ice. So I would watch out for that. But in the spirit of going through process, I'm going to build in SaberSim, and I'm going to build with my own play in mind. I tend to play like one lineup. I like to have a lot of control over these questions of who's on which power play and do I want to stack this? Do I want to stack that? And not being as reliant on what SaberSim has, how it has it aligned out of the box. So I will use SaberSim to build, but I am going to just be playing one lineup in what is today, the $555. So it's $555, and it's only a 100-man field. So really changes what we do and how we're going to analyze things compared to a large field GPP, which today with 4 games is not actually so large. So I'm going to add that as a contest sim. I'm going to go to build my lineups and see what SaberSim gives me. First thing I want to do on this, I already did this. I tend to sort by value just to see who it thinks are the top plays. These seem to make a lot of sense to me. Burakovsky getting power play 1 time at 2,600. Seattle has a low total, but that is some good time and opportunity. Same with Capo Caco at 2,900 and so on. You see the Dylan play there. One thing I'll say about SaberSim is it tends to favor the first D pairing over the second and over the third. I understand why it does that because sometimes that correlates with time on ice, but that does not always. Some teams split that time up more evenly. I think New Jersey is one of them. So I think it's worth looking here at New Jersey, like what Dylan rates as the top value because he's on the top D pairing or projected to be. But, he's getting 20 minutes a game tops as a top D pairing guy. That's not a ton. So someone like Luke Hughes is getting right there too. And Hughes is not the top D pairing, so he may, project a little bit differently. He is priced higher, but it seems to be not differentiating between teams and their time on ice. I mean, Kulikov is the top D pairing. But let's see, someone like Forsling, who's a top guy, is getting 26 minutes. I don't think Kulikov. Yeah, he's getting pretty good minutes. So, okay, but do note that all teams are different in how they play their D guys and split up that time on ice. So, in any event, last thing I'm going to do before building is switch it so that my ownership reflects the type of contest I'm in. And this could vary a lot because it's such a small field. Little differences in how people are playing can really affect how the ownership factors out. But I do want to use SaberSim's ownership. Right now they have Myers in and projected really high as the top value. We'll see if it fades in because of that. But worth thinking about. And I don't care about salary, especially on with only 8 teams. I want to get a little bit of everyone. And I'm going to build without much correlation in mind. I do want a lot of sim diversity to get as many combos as I can. But one thing I'm going to do, because I like to lean into those onslaught stacks, especially that, is I'm going to just tell the builder not to even bother making me the smaller ones. I know that I'm not going to play them. And so, I'd like to see where the top onslaughts grade out. So I'm going to build 5,000 just of those. So I've got that as I want it. I've got the sim there. I'll go and build. And I will say sometimes on smaller slates, it can't quite get there to 5,000, but I think 4 games is probably enough that we'll get 5,000 made. It'll be a little bit slower than a normal build on SaberSim because it's got to parse through all these restrictions that I gave it, as opposed to picking from the entirety of the pool. See if there's any questions in Discord. Yep. Oh, look. So like I thought of this, this question of 5-man stacks with Florida today, because if Ekblad's out, you do get that power play so cheap. And when you do get a power play goal, if you bring along those $2,500 guys on 1 or 2 power play goals, you've done good. You've paid off that value, and you've been able to spend up elsewhere. One thing I like to do is I like to go to Natural Stat Trick to just see what the power play time looked like. So if I went to Florida, in their last game, what you could do is you could scroll down the shift chart here. Slow to come up. And you can see Florida on the power play went Barkov, Samoskevich, who's 2,500. Bennett actually got PP one time. Reinhardt with Ekblad. And then Bachfist was the quarterback of PP2. So, he was projecting in before. I think I was looking at the news, and Ekblad had done some skating. So there's some possibility. He doesn't really make Mikkel won't play. They're going to decide on Ekblad later. So there's still some question if Ekblad plays or not. If he doesn't, you get an opportunity for these cheap guys to come along in a high upside stack. SaberSim, it built us 4,300. That's about right. On a larger slate, it's pretty easy to get to 5,000, 5-mans and 6-mans. On the smaller ones, there's just less combos. So you can see, you're going to get to Tyler Myers the most. This is going to change later in the day. So first thing I'm going to do is run that sim that we uploaded. I like to look at a couple things. One, so the Saber score is not something I'm going to use, but I have found that it does a pretty good job of projecting where the field is going to go. It is a bit of an ownership fade, but tends to favor projection pretty well. So it's got this 3.7 on New Jersey, and Colorado is the 3.3 as the most popular stacks for 5-men and 6-men. I believe that. There is some value in having 4-mans if you want to see where you think the field might go. I have found that looking at it this way tends to get me there enough. The other thing I like to do as the field gets smaller is just sort first by projection too. this Vancouver, who's very well priced, is coming up 60%, 80% really of the top 10 in just projected scores. So, what it's saying is you could get pretty good value on a 3-1 total and then jam in. I'm going to take a couple of values and then jam in McKinnon. So, as the slate, as the contest gets smaller, I'm playing 100-man. It is worth thinking about. Again, with the caveat that this is going to change when the injury news comes in and we get the full lineup, especially if Quinn Hughes is in. He's like 7,100. He's going to change that value. But so let's see if we were to have Sims right now, what it would do. So starting by this the top simulated ROI, there was some diverse range, but Montreal is the tops by far. You get a Washington 5-man. Seems pretty good at a 5 total. One thing worth noting about this Washington 5-man is, for a lot of teams, I would look at this and say, well, how strongly correlated is this? Because, I've got Pierre Lacdubois on even strength 2 and power play 2. He's going to correlate with Sandin and a little bit with, with Carlson and the even strength when they're paired together on the ice. But he's not going to correlate with Ovechkin and Strome. However, one thing to know if you do a little bit of no pucking is that that Washington tends to play Ovechkin on power play 1 and 2. So the normal power play 1 and 2 split ice time, the 4 guys, except Ovechkin tends to stay on the ice the full 2 minutes. And so you are going to actually get some more correlation with Dubois and Sandin and Ovi that SaberSim is not accounting for. So actually that's kind of nice. And, to my mind, if the ownership's right and people aren't on Washington, you get them in with a couple, semi-correlated values here with Kakko and Burakovsky, and you can still throw in McKinnon. I mean, that's a nice lineup. The Montreals look pretty interesting too. They have Armia on power play 1. I guess so this is a question with Montreal. Is Laine is normally on power play 1. He was out last game, and he is, I think, considered day-to-day. He was out with the flu. So see what I don't think there was any news on him. And we'll see, like, if daily face-off. Yeah, they still have the questionable on Laine. So that's going to change things a lot too, and it's something to think about. If he does not play, it is going to make Montreal a lot cheaper, but it's at the same time going to change things around a bit. So, and if he is in, it's going to make them a lot more expensive, although I still think pretty good value. I mean, like you can get prepared for the slate if you want. I build with Montreal, assuming Laine's in. I don't know if they said. Oh, here. So he missed Saturday. Okay. So, yeah, that's Saturday's news. So we'll see. If he's in, I mean, you could still build with him. And I got in Hughes and Luke Hughes. You can even go with like that Dylan value. And a pretty nice final guy here. Yeah, you can go, or you can go Nason to correlate with Hughes on the power play. So Montreal's pretty cheap. They're going to be really cheap if you can go Manson. It's a pretty high total. Susie gets pretty good time on ice. Yeah, it gets about 20 minutes. I think in Goldie's stuff, I noticed that point per dollar Susie's pretty high there. So a lot will be news dependent, but Montreal will have some value either way. You could clearly see what SaberSim wants to do. I mean, SaberSim is going to say, look, Montreal low total, but with Liney out there, you can really stack up this power play or much of it. Throw in a cheap center like Doc, who will not correlate with the EV1 guys, but will get some time with Hudson. And with all those cheap guys, you could throw in just about anything. So you get Makar and McKinnon, the top two spend ups, both places. So we can see what SaberSim's onto. We can expect something similar later, but who knows? Who knows what the builder will give us? But that's in short how I'm going to go. I will tend to go to this top 10 and see what I like from it. I think that you can probably play just about anyone. If we look at the ROIs here, I mean, you got a 23.8 sim ROI for the first lineup. If you go to the 10th lineup, it's only 10% difference. That may seem like a lot, but there's a lot of variance in the simulations itself. Here's what I was talking about with this Florida stuff. I mean, you could do quite a bit. You could still get in Jack Hughes. I don't know. I tend to like what you could do with these 5 men. You get a lot of correlated upside, and you could get in some really heavy high hitting projected guys with them. But in any event, so you are giving up 10% in simulated ROI, but I don't know, let's say we simulated this top lineup again. Just rerun the sim and let's see with varying the sims where the ROI comes out. So it comes out to 19. So it's already 4 lower. And our top lineup is a jersey stack that's going to get in some of their lower price D guys with the top guys and still get in those top plays. So there's a lot of variance in the sims themselves. So you shouldn't be a slave to it. I don't think you want to go too far down, but it is something worth remembering. And if you have some no puck takes, some understandings of how these teams run their lines, you can easily pick one over the other that may feel qualitatively better to you. Even if we go down to 10 now in this sim, we're only going down to 19. So just in the top 10, there was a lot more parity. Oh, I see. Because it's forcing. So this Washington was maybe not even a top 10 in the second sim, right? So keep that in mind, that you have some slack in how you interpret these simulations, both on what you know and just what you prefer. So I'm going to get out of here with that. If anyone has any questions, put them in Discord. All these tools, including the projections that I think are really sharp, are available to you at TrueDFS. And you could get these with the SaberSim package that's basically the same price. So on top of getting the ultimate top-tier SaberSim, you're getting unique projections that will really change the way your lineups are built. If you go to TrueDFS.com and check that out, you'll get the analyses in Discord, premium videos on top of videos like this. So I would check that out. I'm always there to answer questions if you are in Discord and watching now. And that's it. And hopefully we'll be back with another video and continuing to get not only sharpness of takes, but getting down the videos themselves and the smoothness. So thanks a lot. And I am